Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Smart IT's webinar, Securing Your Hybrid Workforce. It's great to see so many people on the webinar as well, so thank you everyone for attending. What we're going to be looking at today is the hybrid workplace. It's obviously here to stay. It's clear that the impact of 2020 has changed the workplace, attitudes and behaviours for the long term. Obviously, to start with, it was very much driven by need, but the hybrid workplace model of combining remote working and coming into office time is being fast tracked to become the new norm for many workers. So it comes with lots of benefits, but also it comes with risks. So how can you secure your organisation from the threats that come with this new model? We're going to be looking at how the threat landscape has evolved over the past year. Cyber attacks have become a lot more sophisticated. We're going to share with you how you can ensure that your remote workforce is secured. So throughout here, we're going to be looking at the agenda will be what are the biggest security threats for home working and hybrid? What are the impacts on not just the larger organisations, but small everyday businesses? Looking at the strategies you can implement to protect your business. We've got a couple of really good real life case studies from customers. And at the end of the webinar, we will have an exclusive offer along with a question and answer session as well. Before we start, just a few housekeeping rules. If everyone can keep themselves on mute and video throughout. At the end of the presentation, there will be the opportunity for question and answers just using the chat facility. So the best estimate is this year there'll be 25 to 30% of the workforce will be working remotely, whether it be 2 days at home, 3 days in the office, and vice versa. We will see a real mixture of work and home office time. What's changed? If we think back to February 2020, a tiny percentage of the adult workforce worked remotely, only 5%. Come lockdown one, 60% of all UK adults were working remotely. And as I've just mentioned, the future predicts between 26 and 30% will just continue to work remotely, coming in the office for meetings, etc. But it will operate a hybrid workplace. So cyber criminals have really switched tactics, many of them even exploiting COVID and taking advantage of the situation. So we have Robert Alderson here now, who's one of our senior IT engineers at Smart IT. Robert has a wealth of experience. I'm going to be handing you over now to Robert to go through today's webinar. Robert, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Nicola. So yes, my name is Robert Alderson. I've been working in IT for the last 10 years. I've been with Smart IT for 2 of those, and we've secured networks up and down the country to an official sensitive/secret standard. So when it comes to protective markings, you've got official sensitive, you've got secret, you've got top secret, you've got official as well. So the way the markings work is the higher the marking, the more security your network needs to be in terms of compliance. So when it comes to official sensitive markings, that's the way you deal with nuclear information. So I worked for a company that dealt with nuclear transport, and they needed to protect their network up to an official sensitive standard and some parts of it up to a secret standard. So I've got experience working with that, and then I've secured hundreds of remote sites across the UK with UTM firewall installs, particularly with Smart IT. I'm certified in Cisco, CompTIA Security Plus, WatchGuard Security Essentials, and ITIL. And I've been securing networks for the last 10 years. So human error is to blame for 88% of data breaches in the UK. 88% may seem like a really high number, and it's not because employees are careless, it's because cyber criminals have become exceptionally sophisticated with the methods they use and have switched tactics to exploit gaps in remote working. We've actually got some examples of how hackers can use COVID-19 to their advantage to release emails and try and catch people off guard, specifically when they're playing on people's insecurities about how COVID's actually being spread and what their concerns are. Everybody wants to stay up to date with the current guidelines. So this is a prime example of the current climate. The COVID outbreak can be used to exploit and trick staff. And this is a COVID-19 ransomware phishing email here. It comes from a spoofed email address and is designed to look legitimate, asking the user to click a hyperlink, which will take them to a login page and intercept their credentials. So that's just the hyperlink down there when they click on that login here to action read. Yeah. Another example, so this example is using a test environment to gather data on how many people will click emails, even with a warning of the potential danger in the email. Because the email still looks legitimate, users still clicked on the hyperlink, providing and entered their credentials into a seemingly legitimate website. So even with a big red flag, you still have people that think, well, yeah, it might have a red flag, but I know this email is legit. I know this, I was expecting this one. So a well-tailored phishing email will catch even the most capable people out, and all it takes is one person or one email for an entire organization to be compromised. So the three biggest security threats of 2021 for the remote workforce are compromised credentials, phishing, and ransomware. Compromised credentials account for 90% of all attacks. Remote users are more susceptible than ever to phishing, and ransomware is becoming more and more sophisticated and is compromising remote systems much more frequently. So we'll start with phishing. Phishing is a cyber attack typically sent as an email or text message, and phishing attacks redirect you to spoofed web pages or contain attachments with embedded viruses that will run the attachment as when it's opened. These are tailored to trick the recipient into giving over valuable information that can either be used to further exploit the company or to simply gain access to their network. They are often a request from like authority figures, such as like a bank or the government, or an email from someone high up in their company. I'm sure we're all familiar with the tax refund text messages and emails that we get all the time. They look pretty convincing, and everybody wants them to be. Moving on to spear phishing, which is a much more targeted attack against a company or an individual. One of the key practices of a hacker is information gathering. The more information they have to work with allows them to be more efficient in their attacks. A lot of company websites show who's a financial controller or who's the company director. They can then look into that person specifically, looking at their public personal information, such as Facebook, to identify what they do in their free time, which golf club they're a member of, and then tailor an email to look as though it's from that club, for example. And then the person being spearphished is actually a lot more likely to open emails, follow links, and download attachments that could be compromised into their company network. The last thing you're going to expect is your golf club, somebody sending you an email from your golf club and trying to catch you out. You know, it's these sorts of things just get exploited really easily, particularly when the hacker's done their research on the person. So phishing is the biggest threat of small organizations, accounting for more than 30% of all breaches, followed by stolen credentials, which accounts for 27%. There are many impacts of phishing on small to medium enterprises. First off, 67% of compromised businesses reported a loss in productivity. This is accounting for the work it takes to recover data, retrain employees, or even just identify where the breaches have come from. 50% experienced reputational damage. 1 in 3 consumers will stop using a business after a security breach. We actually supported a local solicitor who was a victim of a phishing attack, and as a result, they suffered a data loss and legally had to tell customers. This had a huge impact on their reputation, and they actually lost clients as a result. 54% of victims experience data loss, and 70% of organizations who experience major data loss actually go out of business entirely. This is another example of a real email sent to a customer of ours that masqueraded as a colleague from the same company, requesting the user to open a voicemail. The link took them to a fake Microsoft website where the login details were captured and the user's account was hacked. So all they did was just click an email that says that they wanted to listen to a voice recording. It seems pretty harmless. They clicked through to it and they got presented with the Microsoft login page, which again looked legitimate. It's got the Microsoft logo into it. They've logged into the Microsoft login page 100 times over, and they never really inspect the web page particularly, because why would you? The attack actually took it one step further, where their fake credential page actually asked the user to sign in. And once they did that, they were prompted with an error message saying wrong username or password. So they just needed to click here to try again. And when they clicked here to try again, it actually redirected them to the official Microsoft login page. And then when they logged into that, of course, it just worked normally. Everything worked seemingly fine. What had actually happened was when they think they've entered their credentials in wrong, they've actually just sent those credentials over to the hacker. And then they're none the wiser. They don't change their account. They don't think they've been compromised. They're not concerned. They just carry on with their day. And they think nothing of it. But then, of course, their account's been breached. The top 3 most costly phishing attacks. So this is some examples of how big corporations can be hit by this. Not everybody's immune to it. Facebook and Google together were scammed out of more than $100 million between 2013 and 2015 through an elaborate fake invoice scam. And that's an insane amount of money to lose due to what ultimately boils down to an unavoidable mistake. A Lithuanian hacker was able to accomplish this feat by sending each company a series of fake invoices while impersonating a large Asian-based manufacturer they used as a vendor. Crelan Bank in Belgium lost 75.8 million in a CEO fraud attack, which was reportedly discovered during an internal audit, and the identities of the attackers are still unknown. But the bank has implemented new security measures to prevent the attack from happening again. FACC, an Austrian aerospace parts maker, lost $61 million in a CEO fraud scam as well. A hacker posed as the CEO and sent a phishing email to an entry-level accounting employee who've transferred funds to an account for a fake project. And this kind of situation actually underscores the importance of having comprehensive and regular cybersecurity awareness training for employees. This case is a landmark in another way because the company is actually suing their former CEO and CFO for not doing enough to protect the company from millions in losses. Ultimately, it was their responsibility. In the ongoing case, the company has alleged that the two leaders failed to set up adequate internal controls and to meet their obligations of collegial cooperation and supervision. So the number one way to protect yourself from phishing attacks is, of course, hosted email security. We'll go over this more in more detail later on in the presentation, but for now, you just need to understand that it's going to catch attacks before they reach your inbox. It provides you with intelligent scanning, full suite protection, and layered security. We'll go into that further as we get on. We'll move on to ransomware next. So ransomware is actually malware that holds your data hostage and demands payment for its release. It typically infiltrates a system with a phishing email or website infection and exploits an existing endpoint vulnerability. Ransomware that establishes what's called a foothold and expands to other endpoints in your network and moves to discover, collect, stage, and encrypt target data. And once the damage is done, it covers its tracks and exfiltrates data for use or sale on the dark web. Ransomware is unique because once it gets into your environment, there are very few remedies available. All recourse is costly and business interruption is inevitable. In May 2017, the WannaCry ransomware attack brought companies all around the globe to their knees. Most memorably in our case was the NHS. The NHS actually had systems that were not appropriately patched and they had insufficient endpoint management or preventative security. So it wasn't actually a targeted attack on NHS. The ransomware affected companies all around the world, and any company without appropriate security was at risk of this malware. A lot of people seem to think that Windows XP was the problem for the NHS, but actually that's not entirely true. Anybody with a Windows 7 operating system that was 2 months out of date, only 2 months, was actually vulnerable to the WannaCry virus, and they were just as easily exploited. So even though NHS systems actually did run Windows XP, which wasn't advised at the time, they ran Windows 7 as well, and Windows 7 wasn't patched or up to date. And this WannaCry virus managed to worm its way through the entire network and lock down hundreds of files, hundreds of thousands of files. Ransomware works just like any other virus, so it can be hidden in a PDF, an Excel, Word document, or could even be found in OneDrive and Dropbox links. A user would open this file, might fail to open. Usually the user just discards the email and moves on. This is actually where the file is actually run a script or some hidden program starts running in the background and starts browsing your network for any files or folders that it can see. And then it encrypts those files and shows a message asking for payment via Bitcoin to get your files back. They usually don't run cryptocurrency for the payment, so they can't be traced. So ransomware attacks have increased in the UK since the onset of the pandemic. Ransomware attacks have increased in the UK by 80% in the last 3 months of 2020, and as hackers continue to take advantage of mass remote working. The only way to recover from ransomware attack is to recover from a backup file. The Smart IT always recommend more than one backup set. One in-house and one in the cloud is the most effective way. OneDrive can also be infected if it's synced to an infected PC, and SharePoint and 365 backup can be used to help recover these files as well. So there's a few well-known companies in the Northeast that have suffered from this type of exploit. For example, in autumn 2020, both Newcastle and Northumbria unis both fell victim to cyber attacks believed to be as a result of a ransomware attack. The WannaCry ransomware attack was a worldwide cyber attack in May 2017. We've covered that in the slides before. And it caused major issues for the NHS over 4 days. It can take days or even weeks to get systems back online from backups if it happens. And Smart IT Cloud RDS servers can actually be recovered within hours and bring the business back online with very little downtime. And the reason for this is because our Cloud RDS servers actually run replica systems. So if a system is compromised, we can kill the live infected system immediately and power up replica systems, save to a snapshot in time, usually at most at like a difference, at most a day in difference in data. So a good example of this would be if your system was infected at say like 12 o'clock in the day, what we'd do is we'd shut down that system straight away, stop it from spreading any further into your network, and it isolates the issue entirely. And then we'd bring online your replica system, saved to like a different snapshot. So if it was infected at 12, we'd bring on a snapshot at 8 o'clock before the system was infected, sort of like going back in time. And so we'd go back to that snapshot, reboot, and you'd lose 4 hours worth of data. But it's much better than losing all of your data being to ransomware being encrypted and basically demanding a ransom from you. So over 304 million ransomware attacks worldwide in 2020. That's nearly double the number of attacks recorded in 2019. In a ransomware report of 2021, researchers found the average ransomware recovery costs for a business have also more than doubled in the past year, rising from 761,000 in 2020 to 1.85 million in 2021. These costs include the ransom, plus downtime, people time, device cost, network costs, lost opportunity, and other associated financial loss. Only 8% of organizations surveyed around the world received all their data back after paying a ransom. On average, hackers restored only 65% of the encrypted data after receiving the ransom payment. So essentially paying the ransom just isn't an option if you want to get your data back. So how do you stay protected against ransomware? Again, hosted email security. We mentioned before, it can usually establish a foothold via phishing emails. And this is where our hosted email security steps in. We'll go into that further soon. Automated patch management. Smart IT RDS servers are automatically patched up and managed, keeping them consistently up to date alongside replica systems ready to recover if needed. UTM firewalls. So ultimate threat management firewalls can be used to stop attacks at the front door of your network, which we'll discuss again further into the presentation. Moving on to credential theft. Credential theft is a type of cybercrime that involves stealing a victim's username or password. Credential theft allows criminals to reset passwords. They can also lock the user out of their own account. The hacker can download private data and even gain access to other computers in the network. Furthermore, they can wipe the victim's data and even backups if they've got an administrative account. We had a customer fall victim to this where the hacker changed his passwords and recovery details to get to them. Their LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter accounts were all compromised, and the hacker then posted explicit content from the company's selling page, which, as you can imagine, massively discredited them. Insecure password practices are exploited in 81% of cyber attacks worldwide, and 61% of all attacks target businesses with less than 1,000 employees. So how are the credentials stolen? So phishing attacks are number one, a very easy way to exploit passwords, as we've shown in earlier slides. Brute force and dictionary attacks consist of using software to fire password combinations at what's called password databases. So all your passwords of your organizations in any organization are stored in password databases. And basically what the hacker would do is gain access to those databases or just have a copy of those databases. And then they would run a brute force attack against them and try to access them with as many different combinations as they can. Usually this happens once they've got a username from the company. And it's really easy to figure out username conventions as well, because most companies follow the same ones. So every year, general computer processing power doubles, meaning these attacks become more and more dangerous. And employees reusing the same passwords have been a good one. So haveibeenpwned.com is a really good website that you can use to actually see if your password's ever been exploited before. In my own personal experience, we've actually got, if I put my own personal account into this website, you just load it up and it gives you like a little box. You type in your personal email address and it'll tell you if you've ever showed up in any previous exploits. So for me, my personal email account was exposed in 2013 via an Adobe attack. So I wasn't actually the target of the attack. Adobe was, but I had an account with Adobe. And what happened was their systems got exploited, their password database got cracked, and then just released onto the internet in the public domain in clear text. So no matter how secure my password was, it could be the most secure password you could possibly think of, but it's just posted in clear text online. So if I use that password anywhere else for any other account, it's insecure. It can be easily compromised. Employees use easy to hack passwords as well. So insecure passwords can be cracked instantly with the computer resources that can be committed to password cracking in this day and age. You can use a website such as howsecureismypassword.net. If you log onto it, well, you don't log into it, you load it up and you can just type in your password into it. It's just a little box and it'll tell you how quickly that password will be cracked by a standard computer just running password cracking software. If you type an insecure password, it usually gets cracked either instantly or a matter of seconds. You can type in as many complex passwords as you like, but again, going back to previous ways that your passwords can be exploited, it doesn't matter how secure they are, they can still be compromised. People don't keep their passwords safe, so sticky notes on machines is a good one. That's a favorite one that I've seen about. Simply caching passwords in already compromised systems or systems not owned by themselves. So software can actually be used to extract the password. So when you go to a website, you type in your username and password for a login page, and it gives you the option to save those credentials for the next time you use it. Even if you're on your home computer and you just say, yes, that's fine, I'll save that because next time I log into it, I don't have to type them in. When you're saving that to like a cached folder on the machine. And if a hacker exploits that system, so for example, even just something like your own home computer, if that gets exploited, then they can actually extract that database and then take the passwords in clear text again. So again, back to no matter how complex it is, if they can access that password in a different way, they can then use those credentials to further exploit your organization or yourself. So no single password is completely secure, no matter how complex. Any password can be compromised via any of the above methods. The only way to secure credential management is via multi-factor authentication, and that's what we're going to go into next. So how do you secure your workforce? We'll start off with multi-factor authentication, which is addressing your credential management. It's the only way to protect yourself from credential theft. The easiest way to think of it is MFA is something you know, which is your password, and something you own, which is a token. So you get like a token that you'll get installed onto your phone. It's usually via like an application. And you go into that and it will generate a 6-digit token on the end of your password. So think of it as it's all your password's just constantly changing. So you've got your complex password thrown into your 6-digit code that gets generated, and that's constantly changing every 60 seconds, and nobody can access that but you, because it's something you actually personally own. It's an application on your phone that's assigned specifically to your account. The code is generated via MFA and refreshed every 60 seconds. And even if somebody has your email address and password, they now can't access your account without having access to that token. So you can set your phone to receive push notifications, letting you know when someone's trying to access your account and allowing you to allow or deny the request remotely as well. And if you start receiving codes without you logging in, and you know it's time to change your password, basically. It means that somebody's got a hold of your username and password, they're trying to log into your account, but they're getting stopped by multi-factor authentication. This is an example of the multi-factor authentication, the WatchGuard. So what happens is you go to log in and you get the option to either send a push notification. So this would load up on your computer screen. You can send a push notification, or you can generate a one-time password in the bottom there. With the one-time password, just again, same method. But if you send a push notification, it just actually authenticates by a facial recognition. So obviously when you log into your phone, or even a fingerprint, if you log into your phone, usually at the moment, usually you've got facial recognition to log into your phones, and when you do that, it'll auto synchronize with the WatchGuard app, and it will just send the authentication request, providing that you approve or deny it. So if you look on to the next slide, you've got here, that's the push notification that shows up saying, are you trying to sign in? And then you get on the right hand side, you've got the interface for approving or denying the request. So are you trying to sign in? It says who's trying to sign in, what date or time they're trying to sign in at, and it even has their location as well. So you can approve or deny that if that's yourself. So moving on to firewalls. So you've got standard firewalls and you've got UTM firewalls. So first off, what is a firewall? Well, they're essentially the access routes in and out of your network. If you think of your own house, there are many ways to get in and out: front door, back door, or even windows. Typically, you keep all of these locked to prevent people getting in that you didn't invite. Your firewall controls all network traffic destined to either leave your network or enter your network from the outside world. So a standard firewall typically allows traffic in or out based on a very basic rule set, based on something called port numbers. So with no particular consideration of what the traffic is intended to do. The traffic is actually allowed into your network regardless of where it originated, whether or not it contains viruses, whether or not the traffic is appropriate for your business, no web filtering or anything like that. And back to the house analogy, working with a standard firewall essentially means you would let anyone into your house if they match this rule set, such as is wearing a t-shirt, or even leave the doors or windows unlocked when you go out and you don't really care about what their intentions are when they get into your house. On the other hand, UTM firewalls comprehensively checks all data, inbound and outbound, to make sure it's secure and safe. Website filtering and blocking for certain types of websites or groups of people. UTM firewalls can use certificates to intercept the traffic before it's encrypted and then encrypt it with its own certificates. There's geolocation filtering, which can block common hacking countries like Russia, China, or Iraq. Gateway antivirus checks files for virus signatures before they're downloaded with a cloud-based signature database, so that's constantly being updated in the cloud. And this even extends to zero-day attack detection, so catching exploits on the same day that they're actually released into the world. Network discovery can be used to find rogue devices on your internal network. If an exploited system is being used as part of a botnet attack, it will be picked up by your UTM firewall and then actioned upon based on the rule sets that you get. So what a botnet attack is, when you get a virus that gets distributed out to hundreds of thousands of computers, it's called a botnet attack. And what it does is it then kind of hogs some of the resources from those computers and sends out traffic, unsuspecting to your own computer. It sends out the traffic and uses those resources to then crack into databases, for example. They can use those resources and pool them together into like a virtual pool and then use them to attack different password databases or whatever. They can use those resources for whatever they want, basically. Network discovery will pick that up and basically tell you if that's happening. So you'll know if your system's been exploited and you can get them shut down immediately. Firmware updates are provided immediately for any vulnerabilities found in the hardware or software version of your device. Vulnerabilities in any device are usually found by security teams specifically hired to do so. With a UTM firewall, this team will be constantly trying to exploit systems and then subsequently releasing patches for the exploits to keep you forever protected and up to date. To refer back to the house analogy, the UTM firewall is essentially a well-trained bouncer that will sit on the front door of your organization who works around the clock. Moving on to hosted email security, it's more secure against credential theft, implementing phishing and imposter email protection, which allows you to detect and block non-malware threats that try to trick your people into sending money and sensitive corporate data. We also provide encryption features on outbound sensitive data, meaning you can send encrypted emails from prying eyes on the public domains that they traverse, such as the internet. Our solution uses multi-layer detection techniques, including reputation and content analysis, that will categorize emails into subsets, such as phishing, malware, imposter threats, bulk email, and spam. And these are subsequently quarantined, stopping them dead in their tracks before they even touch your network. We can then cache emails. We can even cache emails for up to 7 days if in the event your email server is offline. And our solution also provides a sandbox environment, which allows you to view emails safely to confirm whether or not they are malicious in a controlled environment separate from your organization's network. So before they've even got into your organization, you can actually open these emails in what's called a sandbox environment. So nothing gets in or out of that, and basically allows you to decide whether or not the email is safe to then allow into your organization. It just gives you that extra layer of, not sure about this one, I can check it though. So this is an example of the hosted email security dashboard that you can see. You can use that to keep an eye on all email traffic within your organization. You've got there, you can emails, you can decide which comes out, which goes out, and which comes out. It's a very comprehensive solution. We've got a few real smart IT case studies to go through with you. So the first case study was a well-known charity that had a locally hosted RDS server open to carers and members of staff, allowing them to work safely externally. They reported that regularly the server would completely freeze and then come back to life. We found that port 3389, the standard RDP port, was forwarded for the RDS server through a standard firewall, allowing the users to remote work. Perfectly acceptable setup. You see it everywhere. That's a lot of people do at the moment, is they just forward the ports through their firewalls, their standard firewalls, and they just forward the standard port. So 3389 is your standard RDP port that you use to access servers on the protocol that is RDP. So we ran through the diagnostic process, finding error logs within the server, reporting thousands of failed login attempts. We traced the IP ranges back to Russia and to the Middle East, and systems from these locations were constantly trying to access the server via brute force attacks. We recommended installing a WatchGuard firewall, And the firewall allowed us to restrict access to the public ports via UK sites only. So that's in the geolocation filtering I was mentioning before. We were also able to detect any flooded requests from coming through and blocking their specific IP addresses from trying again after a threshold was met. So once an IP address, a public IP address, has tried to access the system a certain number of times, got so many failed attempts, we then block that IP address from transmitting again, and it just can't even get into the network or even try. We ensured only secured, authenticated traffic was allowed, and instantly the firewall stopped the excessive load on the server, and it stopped freezing altogether. Not only was the customer's issue resolved, but they were also protected from many of the threats listed in this previously in this presentation. A customer, so onto the next case study with a manufacturer. So a customer discovered that emails were being sent from her account without her knowledge, and these emails threatened the organization and the user's reputation, and could also be used to further exploit customers on a trust basis. Due to these potential consequences, the situation was a high priority security threat. Smart IT investigated and found that the victim had been exploited via a phishing attack. Of course, we rectified the breach and advised implementing hosted email security to prevent these attacks from coming through, or give the user a sandbox environment to test emails beforehand if they're not sure. As an additional layer of security, it was also suggested that multi-factor authentication would prevent the hacker from gaining access to the system should the password even be compromised. The client initially chose just to go with MFA, working from the understandable idea that if the hacker can't access the system, there's no perceived threat, which makes a lot of sense, really. I mean, if you can stop them in their tracks from getting access to your system, even if they've got your password, then you think you're safe. Of course, around a month later, the same employee found her MFA app was asking to allow sign-in requests when she wasn't trying to log into her email account. Smart IT investigated as a matter of urgency and found that she had again fallen victim to the same phishing attack, or a similar phishing attack. Although the hacker couldn't get into her email account and her passwords, which she used, they couldn't get into her email account. The password that she used was actually one that she used from multiple different accounts. So multiple systems were actually compromised. Realistically, if she used that password elsewhere, the hacker has access to that and then can try and access those other systems as well. So they then bought the hosted email security, and as originally advised, and there's been no further breaches since, because that can stop the phishing emails and it stops the breaches that way. So as a thank you for attending this webinar, we've got an exclusive webinar promotional code, which actually will give you 50% discount on installation costs of hosted email security, MFA, or firewalls, and it's valid for 30 days. And then if we've got any questions at all, you can send an email to my email address there, robertalderson@smartitgroup.co.uk, or you can ask in the chat and we'll be happy to respond to them and give you our thoughts. Thank you very much. And we'll have a look at the questions now.